Hey, I'm Mac. I'm a designer at Square. Product designer, technically, I guess. We don't really have titles. Product designer, mainly a digital product designer. I work on some physical stuff, but it's predominantly like app experience, dashboard experience, and then a lot of kind of tablet and overall public web digital type stuff.
Do you say like where you went to school and all that? Graduated?
Do people tell each other?
Well, for this it's important.
Yes, of course. Yeah. Okay, so I went to UL from 2012 to 2016. Graduated in industrial design. While I was in school, started working on digital products back at a small agency called Toast, and then sort of fell in love with like UI design from there. So went from working at Toast, doing UI work for like 2 years, and then right out of school, I guess the degree helped, maybe. So right out of school, I got a job in Menlo Park, California. I met a designer who was just looking to like give someone a chance kind of thing. So even with very little experience, he helped me get out to California and started working at a small fintech startup, working with banks primarily. And then from there just became a financial technology designer.
Did you like ever imagine that that's what you would be doing?
No. Fintech can be pretty boring. Working with banks are extremely traditional, and they have a long-standing history of working a certain way. And so any disruption or any like design that comes into that is a lot of it is just for show. Like we call it like innovation theater, right? They employ startups to give them a lot of money and then just sort of like act like they're making a lot of like new technology. They're not though. So fintech is interesting because it's a lot of just working with banks and people in ways that like people are already used to dealing with their finances, and that's really hard to change because people need to be able to trust you with their money and need to be able to like trust that you have their best interests in mind. But anyway, so went from working explicitly with banks to Square, where now it's no longer that like banking and customer relationship. It is like empowering small businesses, and so we do everything we can to like help people get off the ground, start making money, and start kind of empowering themselves and supporting themselves financially and get rid of banks, sort of thing.
So how does design come into that?
So as a product designer, I mean, my primary job is to push the pixels, right? It's to like design the screens, design the flows, make sure that what we're building is usable for people. But our designers go beyond that quite a bit, and it's more of we design the entire experience, which can mean anything from designing the actual screen to like leading the team, to working directly with your engineers to make sure that like in the worst and best case scenarios, they're building something that's still usable and still makes sense to people. That's where fintech gets pretty interesting too, is that there are a lot of laws and regulations and sort of like status quo norms that you have to hit on. And so changing those takes years. So a lot of what design does is like we come up with a couple of brand new solutions to things and just test that over and over again. A lot of research, a lot of testing, a lot of challenging banks and like card networks and whatnot to kind of change some of the rules, so that can fix things better in the future.
Do you want to like explain what UI and UX is to someone who wouldn't know, I guess?
Yeah, so it's actually there's a funny like timeline of titles that has happened, which is why I say I don't really have a title. So back around 2008, 2009, Facebook started calling their designers UI, UX designers, because product design was normally held for like physical products, right? Industrial design is product design. In Silicon Valley, product design is completely digital. So UI, UX for user interface and user experience was anything like on screen. So it's anything from the apps that you use on your phone to just like your phone system or like operating system on a computer to the famous massive screen in a Tesla to like the buttons you would press on a fridge. Even though they're like physical buttons, there's an experience that takes place there. So the UI side of it is very physical pixel oriented. It is where a button is placed on a screen. But the UX of it is like what happens when I press that button. A lot of it is what does the error state look like? If something goes wrong, how do you message that to someone, or how do you walk them through the architecture of an app in like path of least resistance and least frustrating ways. So yeah, I guess that's where design also comes into sort of building a product. Is I would consider myself, I guess, more on the experience side of things, because designing the pixels is the easy part. That's like I can build a screen, test it, make sure it works, and ship. The difficult part is setting up architecture, right? It's like the entire space that plays, and the bigger your app or experience or dashboard is, like the more time and effort it takes to make sure things are placed properly.
Do you work solo or on a team?
So I work sort of both. So I am on 2 different teams right now as the like primary designer for it. I work directly with my engineers, directly with my managers, my engineer managers, and my product managers. So between design, engineering managers, and product managers, we make decisions together for like teams. So I'm the primary designer and design most of like what our team ships. But I fall under the payments design org, which means that there's like 4 of us who all work on payments related things. So we have complete context as to like what each other are working on, but don't work on it with each other. So before I can ship anything, like we run it by them, we get reviews done. It's like a class crit kind of thing. Everyone gets in a room and is like, throw it up on screen, let's critique it and tear it apart because we can't ship this. And that happens on like twice a week. Yeah. So it's sort of solo work, but you constantly have checks and balances in place for like the things that you're shipping, as well as like the styles you're using and like overall experience building.
What are some other ways that like your now real design job is the same and different from whenever you were in school as a designer?
Oof, good question. Okay, I'm gonna have to think about this one. So I think the most important thing about like industrial design school for me was not learning how to design physical products or like specific products or anything, right? So as opposed to like automotive design, you have to know all of the specs and details of designing a car. I think with industrial design, it just taught me how to think of experiences instead, how to properly research, how to properly test things, and how to properly kind of understand a problem. Because at its core, design is just still solving problems, right? Whether that's on a screen or like a physical piece. So school taught me that part, and then I had to teach myself the digital part. So similar ways, like it's still, here's the problem, here are some potential solutions, come up with more, test them, validate, and like move forward. And then of course critiquing, like design critiques are always the same. It doesn't matter what company you work at, like if you're a freelancer, you still have to do it, right? If you're working alone, you reach out to friends and you're like, hey, can you look at this for me real quick, make sure everything's fine. Working with clients is very similar, right? Where I can design a website for them, pitch it to them, and have them kind of change everything on the fly. So I think learning how to accept a critique is a big part of school, I think, and it is fundamental to making it in this industry, because if you sit in a review and you don't take it well, or you start getting way too defensive way too quickly, you're not going to last long, because everything is like attitude driven. It is like a willingness to work with each other, it is a willingness to put yourself out there, a willingness to like accept that your solutions are completely wrong, and that you need to like keep evolving as you go. It's more of a mindset thing. I think like design school teaches you how to think and understand, and then work, you apply all of that to it.
So for students who are like interested in doing the kind of design that you do, what would you recommend that they do? To like offset what we don't learn in design school, I guess. Yeah, for sure. I think the easiest part of UI, UX, digital product design, what else do we call it these days? It doesn't matter. Visual designers. The easiest part is that like it's free for the most part, right? Like, so the way I got my start into this, I wouldn't have this job had I not started doing it second year of ID school.
someone needed a designer in Lafayette, and I just was there kind of thing and started doing weirdly graphic stuff that I had never done before. But because it's digital, it means it's like free and fast, and you can ship in a day, and you can also test for free. So a lot of getting into this industry for me was learning the programs. Started with the whole Adobe suite, and now I hate touching Adobe. Using things like Sketch is like $50, and it's the industry standard for design tools. Figma is free, and it's offsetting the industry. Our entire company now uses Figma, and like students can use it at absolutely no cost. Shipping products or testing products through things like InVision and Marvel and all of that is also free. So I guess the point here is like, do it, like literally just do it, because people say that with industrial design too, right? Or any type of design is like, oh, just start doing anything you want. It's really difficult in like any digital sense to have a complaint or like excuse to not do it, because you can sit down for a couple hours at night and like put out a real thing and test it and like have people play with it. I think my favorite part about being like a digital product designer is that it is fast. Like I can churn out products immediately, and if I have an idea this morning, I can literally ship it to customers tonight. And so that speed means you can iterate and move like way faster than any product.
Yeah, you don't have to like wait for, your prototyping isn't like waiting for paint to dry.
Yeah.
To set and like.
No, absolutely. Your prototyping is just like, oftentimes it's just like put a screen in front of someone and be like, what do you see? All right, cool, I'm gonna change it now. So it's super simple.
So where do you see yourself like moving in the future as far as your design career goes?
Funny enough, this is a hot topic around my work right now, because I'm gonna move to Amsterdam. It's gonna happen.
Wow.
I don't know when. I think, so part of, if you're telling students, get out of Louisiana. Sorry. The industry moves really fast, and it's extremely cutthroat, and so San Francisco is a hotspot for it right now and always has been. But all over the West Coast and anywhere like tech companies are popping up. So San Francisco, Portland, Seattle, Austin, Texas, New York, weirdly like Philadelphia, but a lot of Europe too. Like design is there, and they need designers, and they're like hungry for designers and always will be. So where I see myself is not in Louisiana. I'll be in San Francisco for a while, I think. Yeah, as long as tech is there, I'll be there.
And then Amsterdam?
Yeah. Honestly, that's like the best part too about digital design, right? Is that, I mean, my laptop is right there. Like anywhere I can take my laptop, I can work. So I'm off this week and here, but I've been doing work for them. Like being remote is very easy in the tech world. Tech companies understand that a lot of people work better remote, and so they're like better empowering people to do that. Especially as they're like, so Square, for instance, we are headquartered in San Francisco, but we're growing at such a fast pace that like we can't hold everyone. We need to decentralize a little bit, and so it's like, go work in Amsterdam, go work in South Africa, like wherever you work best, because it's not about how much time you put in or how many hours you work or where you are. It's about like the work you produce. So if you can produce it from wherever you are, then it works.
That's awesome. It's a dream.
It's amazing. Yeah, being able to just be like, I'm gonna move to Amsterdam one day is kind of tight. You know?
And them like being okay with it.
Yeah, they're fine with it. Yeah.
Go. I mean, that's awesome that they recognize that talent in you to like just be like, we appreciate what you're doing and we want you to work wherever you work best too.
Absolutely,
like,
yeah.
Instead of like putting you into a box of where you need to be at a certain time.
Yeah. And I mean, what I was saying too, a lot of it is attitude. It's how you work with people, right? So there are responsibilities you have, right? Like, would it work best for my team if I were in Amsterdam? Probably not, because I work with them every day and I sit right next to my engineers, and like there's this back and forth that just works better in real life and face to face. So the responsible thing to do would be like stay in San Francisco, you know, for Square, for my team, it would be stay there and work with them. But tech in general has a very open mindset to like who you are, what you do, and where you are. And so if you work best in solo situations, completely disconnected from the company, they can respect that, which is nice. Yeah.
What keeps you inspired and motivated in your work?
Oh man, a paycheck. Keeps me inspired. So our sellers at Square, our customers, we call them sellers because each one of them is a small business, and but honestly, like your sellers and like your customers and users, there's something amazing about being able to churn out a product in a week with ridiculous timelines. You stay up all night, you produce real work, and then you ship it to someone, and there's like a smile on their face, or like they use some interaction exactly how you were hoping for them to, or they like find some hidden gem that like you threw in there just for fun. There's things like that that keep it fun and like active. Just yesterday I was sitting in Rev, and completely unprompted I was like sitting at a table, and these two guys walked in, and one of them started selling Square like to the other guy, and it was like, oh, it's this little reader, you plug it in and you can take all your payments. And that's very Square specific, but like being in Lafayette, Louisiana, hearing that conversation take place between two people is like, that's cool. That's what I work on. And like being able to know that like there's people in really weird places just like using my product is amazing. Right back to the digital thing, like the fact that you can do it that quickly, the fact that I can launch something and then see it in someone's hands and see them like enjoy using it is phenomenal.
That's crazy. So what are your project timelines?
Yeah, launching an app is a little different than physical products. So you have kind of, I guess, three basic timelines, right? You have it's even different with startups and public companies. So let's take like a startup, for example. There's kind of three timelines. You have your research and your market fit and your funding phase, where all you're doing is finding out if the product you want to build will actually work or like actually fit into the demographic that you're targeting, right? So it's similar to like ID research phase. You're just sort of like testing out or understanding what your problem is. Then you go into this breakneck speed of just like, we have to build as quickly as possible, and we have to launch something on this date that we gave someone for no reason. So you work really fast and really hard to launch something. You hit all your like media stories, and you like hit the app store, or you hit like your dashboard or whatever, and you're finally live. And then you cross into like the third one, which is just maintenance. And a lot of times in maintenance, you should be shipping new features and new products on top of what you've already built. So those timelines are similar. They're very fast. They're very like aggressive most of the time. Because the other thing is you're trying to beat other people to market. Like, you're not the first person with an idea. You never are. Like, nothing is brand new. So you're always racing somebody else. And so you're trying to beat them, but at the same time, like, ship good products. So that takes time. Maintenance mode's a little easier. You're just kind of like reaping in the research and the stories, and that your features are doing well, and just tweaking them to make it better over time. Basically.
What was it like moving from like Lafayette to San Francisco? That's an extremely different culture.
Yes, extremely different culture. So there's a couple of things. I think one, the South in general, Lafayette, Louisiana, is very siloed and very like, how do I put this? Everyone in Louisiana is from Louisiana, and everyone has kind of the same mentality, and it's very like community oriented, and it's a little slower paced, but it's very like friendly and open. Places like San Francisco or New York or wherever are extremely like multicultural, and it is, everyone you work with and meet is from somewhere else, especially San Francisco. The average tenure is somewhere between like 5 and 10 years, and then people leave. So everyone there is there to work and is there to like work at ridiculous speeds. And that's the other thing. The second thing is just like pacing. Like, I have learned in just 2 years in San Francisco more than I could have learned in 10 years like in Lafayette or New Orleans or like even Austin. Just because to like maintain your career path, or to maintain like your team and like the things you want to build, you have to be constantly learning and like iterating on top of what you've already done. And yeah, I do more in a day now than I would have done in like 2 to 3 weeks, like, you know, in school mentality. So.
Do you think that's just like the difference between the job mentality and the school mentality, or do you think it's like really a cultural difference?
Probably a little of both, but it's a lot of cultural difference. I think because San Francisco is so cutthroat, it means that everyone's working at that speed, and there's always someone faster than you, and there's always someone better than you. So if you are going to do well, then you have to be faster and better. And so when you compare to places like even New York, sometimes like you watch the work that they churn out and it takes a few weeks longer, just because in San Francisco, someone else can snag your funding before you can finish what you're working on. So it's all about speed and all about just like churning out work.
How do you like stay sane and all of that?
Honestly, it's back to like reaping the benefits of what you've done. If you work at ridiculous freelance speeds, then it's fun to be able to say you did something all alone and like you did something for the client, like exactly what they needed and address their problem. So it's that end result that like makes it worth it. In work and like in a career mentality, being able to see your users use your stuff is like phenomenal. So even if I spent 70 hours working on this for just this week, the second it touches their hands, you're like, I did that. Like I worked on that thing, I put it in their hand, and it's amazing to feel.
That's awesome. All right, one more question, bonus question. What is it like to be a colorblind designer?
Yeah. So I hid the fact that I was colorblind for as long as I could. So whenever I got the job in Menlo Park, my manager for 3.5 months didn't know that I was colorblind. And so I'm red-green colorblind, so I can't tell the difference between like grays and light greens and reds. And in UI, that's dangerous because we always use red for like destructive or bad or errors, and then green is like success and you did it, yay. So one time I changed a button I was trying to make a button disabled, so it was going from blue to gray, and I switched it from blue to green, and then like we were in a review and he very politely was just like, I'm not gonna call you out, but I'm curious why you chose green instead of gray for this. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm colorblind, so I can't tell that it's not actually gray. But anyway, after that, I had another product manager who's like very sweet and explained to me that it's not a handicap in any way. If anything, it's kind of a benefit. So especially in the digital world, like you stick to very specific color palettes and very specific paradigms that exist and have existed for, since the beginning of like UIs kind of thing. And they're always changing, but they're easy to keep up with. Certain things are like, you never just use red, you use red and an icon and a label. So if there's something wrong, there's so many different ways to communicate to that to someone. So you use every way that you can to communicate, and it shouldn't be just color. The other thing is like, I'm an accessibility use case right out the gate, right? So 8% of the male population in the US is colorblind, and like under 0.5% or so female. So that's a large portion of people, and it's very easy to forget about accessibility. Blind people use apps. You have to have good screen readers and like the ability to enable it for them. Deaf people can't rely on like sound triggers when they're using any type of screen, right? So colorblind's easy to forget about, but like when your designer is colorblind working on it, there's a good chance you have some of those cases covered already. And it took me a while to figure that out, and it took someone else to help me quite a bit, but honestly, it doesn't affect my work day to day at all. Sometimes I forget I'm colorblind, but
That's awesome.
yeah. And then I like can't know what shirt color I'm wearing, and then yeah.
What are you wearing?
Yeah, exactly. I asked my mom yesterday if I had a green or maroon shirt on. It was green.
Where can we find you online? Keep up with your work?
Yeah. I can plug social media. Twitter, Matt Cormier. Website, mattcormier.com. Instagram, also Matt Cormier. Just like Google Matt Cormier, and yeah, I'll be there. Yeah,
Awesome.
for sure.
Well, thank you.
Of course.